Greetings. Okay, the microphone is working. I was wondering. So, today, for a very special topic, we're going to be reading from this fantastic book, The Parinama Method, and we're at the section on overwhelm, too much information. So, this is page 226 and overwhelm. I was about to spell it spelling bee style. so there's so this I'm gonna actually expand out a little bit with this one and talk about contextualizing Parinama method, comparing Parinama method, and yeah, I'm gonna say it that way. I'm gonna say it's context in comparison. So, So with overwhelm, one of the things that being overwhelmed does is it's the psychological impact of stress. And it's the psychological impact on our capacity for nervous system regulation. And once again, stress makes easy things hard and hard things impossible. And when it comes to what we're doing here in Parinama method, which could at first glance bear a striking resemblance to any other self-help or any other sort of new age, any other yoga, kind of navel gazing, so to speak, of kind of this stare into me and, you know, and with, it's like, gosh, if I just have these breakthroughs, I'll have money and a hot body and find love and have a great career, which is also possible here. It's also possible here. But what is actually available here in terms of this level of exploration is we're actually going into ourselves in a way that has a level of focus that mimics the kind of self-obsession in a sense. But what we're doing is we're coming to know ourselves so that we can expand our capacity. And it's almost like becoming adults. When I first started working on this, one of the things that I thought about a lot was this is kind of a reparenting manual. And most people need some facet of this, but that it's, that it's a reparenting manual, that we're going through each aspect, each stage of our nervous system in order to come into ourselves and to unify fractured or split aspects of ourselves in terms of having parts of ourselves that we judge or we're not on our side or we don't see, we don't understand the context. So we're micro dehumanizing ourselves. So we're beginning a pattern that really serves something dark, which is to recognize dehumanization as to recognize fear as a necessary part of life, to recognize shame as a necessary part of being a good person, to these fractures, to make this something, make these qualities that are just part of being alive. So when we look out in the world and we see it happening, it makes sense to us because we go, yeah, terrible. And even the thing about, so when we go through the human rights of each of the hubs, and reminder, this is, like, I think in page 24. One of the ways to know about interruptions and stressors that's apart from the adaptations and holding patterns, and honestly, right now, I think if I were to rewrite the book, that might be one of the things that I'd change, is I would just say, and this is actually kind of an interesting one of the actually, I won't get into that. I would just say, how do you react to this notion that it's not merit-based, that, say, for the 4th hub, all humans deserve dignity? All humans deserve dignity. Now explore that. What are the exceptions? What do you believe are exceptions? And in doing that, that you can find your own divisions. I mean, maybe the way in defense of the way this is written, where we're looking at the adaptations in terms of our personal behaviors, that this is a road that I think folks are more inclined to take than to hit something that's so confronting as, like, wow, it, like, whether or not, because I think there's a little bit of like a bridge in this, but I mean, to believe it's not, you don't earn it. It's just by being born that these rights belong to you, and that the reason they don't is they get taken back to you, in many cases sold back to you for trade of even more of your value, your power, your imagination. So, what am I getting at here? And why is this included in Overwhelm? Too much information? Well, so one of the things that is, sort of a outcropping of emotional capacity being reduced, and feelings of powerlessness being absolutely cultivated through shame, and the notion of requiring the merit, and like these really, like, very intense for sanctions for social belonging that are dehumanizing. um Sorry, the gardeners are out there. It's like, yeah, it's confusing. The gardeners. Yeah. Is that, so one of the things about the 6th hub is about seeing and being seen, and how much are you willing to see? And we begin with what we're willing to see about ourselves. And this is where it has to begin. Because if we do not have the capacity, and we have not done this exploration and reclamation internally, you can only, so this was the thing, you can only meet someone where they've met themselves. So by increasing our capacity, we increase our capacity as human beings in the world. And by reclaiming our knowing, our understanding, I'm gonna call it like understanding, then by doing this, we become the people who can see. And one of the things, in terms of, like, when you talk about the absolute trauma of feeling unseen and invisible just as a human being, the long-lasting implications and the hungers that creates, and as long as that exists below the subconscious and is not fully owned and evaluated, then it can't really be understood in other people. And in the first hub, and I took out a lot of the, and actually I'd say my editor did, took out a lot of the, interview quotes, like the stories. There were a lot of stories. It's funny, I just remember, yeah, I don't know, it's like I remember taking them out, or even Allison being like, "Yeah, I think this should go," and her expecting me to fight it, and I was like, Bye," like, and things that had been, like, a lot of work to create, like, just because 'cause they're amalgams of a bunch of different stories. It's interesting. It's, like, funny because there's, like, whole sections that just don't exist in the book, which in reading it cover to cover is making that clear. But, like, so this thing about and I'm gonna use capital T trauma here, is that things that are like being unspoken of, and the capital T trauma of it not even being acknowledged as being wrong. So let's, for example, right now, as I live and breathe here in Boston with gardeners refilling my topiaries and, a very blissy life. There's 120,000 people who are fleeing for their lives in Europe. And so there's this like century-old Armenian genocide, which, apparently Hitler had said the Armenian genocide was inspiring because nobody talked about it. Um, is happening right now. And so here's the thing, when our nervous system is just maxed out because of overstimulation, and because we're spending without knowing that we're spending on it, like, taking in, noise, and dealing with people who will just don't give a shit, and they'll just dump all over us, and we're kind of like, yeah, I should probably be tougher and be able to handle this. So you just like keep spending your budget for the day. Overstimulation with media, all this kind of stuff, that it's like it's spending it, that there's, it's like, and the capacity is limited, especially for so many folks who this is an inheritance of sorts, like of emotional literacy and emotional capacity, is that then when it comes to taking on the awareness of even fairly slightly complex, painful notions of world events, they turn into another form of shame, which is, I probably should be paying attention to that, but I'm just not, where people go, "Oh, yeah," and the thing is there's just no budget, and there are people that are, and so this is a symptom of everything that we are going through with the hubs, is increasing our capacity so that we can be more present in the face of difficult things. So we can see. I mean, for many people who weren't seen, there was one sort of amalgam which was this kind of represented, this happened with many people who, like, grandparents or aunts or community members presented that validation and interest and delight in a child's upbringing, and that the parent was too busy, and so to actually pay attention. And that was like a lot of the stories were that, it's like, well, my mother and my father were too busy. And it's kind of similar to this. It's like we want, it's like an aspiration in this is to be able to pay attention to ourselves to the point that we're growing our own capacity, so that we actually have the capacity to see and hear, and actually not put ourselves in blinders to sort of self-protect ourselves from overwhelm. because overwhelm is where we kind of short out and lose orientation in a matter, you know? So, yeah. So that's the context. It's that we're, like we're becoming, it's like this is the path to becoming like, I guess what you call an adult, that um yeah. Yeah, it's like one of the things that just came to my mind was like this kind of notion of like that like one of those like parents when you were growing up who like seemed to just be able to like who was like kind of cool and had everything under control and actually could like see you and like attend to you and wasn't flustered and overwhelmed and like kind of losing their shit over it, and that like who had this very, like potent level of attention that they could just administer very quickly to you and make you feel like things were under control and then, kind of like move on. Um, but yeah, okay. So that's in the context of what this is in comparison. So let's talk comparison. I'm talking parinama relative to these things I just spoke about. Um, so one of the things that let's see, I wanna phrase this in a way that isn't too ridiculous. So projection is, it's something I use to understand, like, myself, is it's a way of kind of gauging things that are, like, a little bit underneath the layer, and it's, like, my reactions to things or who I think people are. So if I'm sitting in a restaurant, and what do I think they're thinking of me? So it's like if I have someone and I like who just like literally a stranger on the street, what do I think they're thinking of me? And that's where I look at that and I'm like, okay, let's like look at that. That because that's just me. That's me talking like kind of, that. And yeah. And so one of the things that I was noticing is that influencers on social media, specifically almost exclusively, like attractive, thin, obviously, like or not obviously, but apparently, um, like economically advantaged white women in the spiritual community who were really like outside the confines of, sort of like the economic system, we'll call it. And it's like playtime, selling this kind of like it's fun to just play in life and the joy and the fun um and I think one of the things is it's so um lacking in dynamism, where it's like there's just a childishness to it and an oblivion. So it sort of represents like like honestly like a to me a level of development. It's like and yes, that's a facet of who we all are. And so no shade on the actual expression of this, of joy and fun and play. That's that's not what I'm pointing to here. What I'm pointing to is obliviousness, and messages of, at the end of the day, like Byron Katie, which is like like the self-gaslighting method. which is like, if you really get down to it, like, nothing's going wrong, so the problem is you think there's something going wrong. I wanna look this up because I'm really willing for anyone to come at me on this too, by the way. As soon as somebody the 4 questions. So let's do the 4 Byron Katie questions, and let's just really consider these in the context of someone who is privileged, like, who's, like, literally yeah, who has the types of advantages I do, um, versus somebody right now who is in the middle of, the Armenian genocide, who's fleeing for their life. A Palestinian who doesn't have the right to the water table underneath their own land, a Black, person in America who's like I mean, who so you have a problem. Okay, so it's like, now you have a problem. So question 1 is it true? The answer to the first 2 questions is just 1 syllable, either yes or no. So it's kinda like, am I fleeing from my life? So it's like, oh, so if you're kind of, like, really bad at, doing this kinda thing, you're gonna say, "Yes, it's true," because it's like, wrong answer. Because question 2 is, can you absolutely know that it's true? It's like and now you can get this sense of, like, where this is trying to that it's trying to, like, move you. Yeah, there's really an opinion here about when somebody w it's what's really funny about this? It just occurred to me. It's so ridiculous. It's like, okay, is it true? The answer to the first 2 questions is just 1 syllable, either yes or no. So is it true? Like, we're gonna use, like, am I fleeing from my life? Okay, and and it's like, yes. And then the question 2 is, can you absolutely know that it's true? So it's basically like I'm sorry. It's like it's literally it's so ridiculous because it's literally like being sure that you're gonna say it's okay. It's like breaking you down. It's like, "Is it true? Yes." "Are you absolutely sure it's true?" So, and question 3 is, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And then, who would you be without that thought? So these are the 4 questions that work really well if your problems are the kind of problems, quite frankly, that I have. Um, like, are the gardeners like, being really loud? Are the gardeners being loud? And were they saying gross things with, like yeah, I didn't really wanna hear this morning. I forget what they were already, but whatever. And it's like, are they being loud? Yes. Can you be sure that's true? It's like, well, maybe it's relative, but yes, I'm gonna go with yes. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? I'm kind of annoyed. Or I feel like a little bit invaded in my space. Then who would you be without that thought? Probably a person that's, more at peace, honestly. Like, I'd probably be a bit more at peace. So it's like, great. So, yeah, the self-administered gaslighting method, and also when it's, like, these really, like, kind of doe-eyed, happy the shiny happy people, and that it's kind of like there's this thing that's like, that's the thing, so for people who are in, you know, kinda like the landed gentry, so to speak, it's kind of like, yeah, if you think there's problems, like, you're actually not realizing that you're one of the people that has it really good. So, keep that in mind. And that the idea is ultimately that you could get yourself completely away, and if anything, you're driving yourself away from difficult feelings. And, yeah. So, okay, so overwhelm. It there's well, so, okay, back to my thing about being like, why was just seeing kind of these live sexy, they're always sexy, by the way, in this very particular way that is very, conventional, but it's like playtime, dress time, fun time. I'm doing, gymnastics and AKA yoga, and I'm, like drinking my just in like look at my outfits, and I'm, like which is cool, but I think the part of it when I was exploring like what's the part of this that's like so difficult for me, it's the oblivion. And when we're talking about the sixth hub, that's the oblivion that is interrupting and stressing, which is that it's like if you are to have an actual problem that threatens your human rights, you're like kind of not like you're interfering. It's like it's a hassle. So we're going back into this kind of like reparenting thing. It's like, and these like wounds where it's like people who have real pain in terms of like, um, yeah, I mean, like oppression right now. Like there's like it's like serious economic stressors that are compressing the middle class in America, and people are really distressed for obvious reasons that relate to feeling physically safe. Um, to even be able to, like most of the time, it's like if you look at these pictures, it's all like white women, and because it's like it really would be hard to create a community where you have a lot of diversity without acknowledging the realities of being a human being right now. And that isn't to say it's like you're stripping me of my joy, because you want to be able to have clean, real joy that's arising from being in your integrity, not from like it's just like, well, we don't look at the shitty stuff, we just focus, all we ever do is focus on the positive. I'm not like a big person on it, like when people, so for whatever, whether good or bad, it's like the think positive sort of like Oprah thing where it's like, your problem is you're just thinking negative all the time. And it's like, yeah, I think there's actually something about like being more curious about that, being more curious about like what is arising here in terms of this thought. What can it show me? Instead of being like, yeah, it's just making me an asshole. It's like, well, if you just stop, if you ignore it, it's like it's an arising notion. This thing is like, don't pay attention to bad things and just keep like looking on the sunny side of life. It's like, you know, this is the context and comparison part, which is 29 minutes of this video. So yeah, welcome any comments. This is it's a little bit, I guess, of a departure. It's a strong, I guess, a relatively strong opinion relative to some of the other conversations that we've had here. But it's important, and I don't think that most people that would be exploring this would not on some level be kind of aware that like sort of something's like that there's some dissonance in that, which is turning away from suffering, because it's like I'm building my reality, and in my reality there's just, palaces and joy and heavens, and I'm not, I'm pulling my data points and, you know, like, like, there's always, like, sort of a poisonous, almost pedagogy, like The Secret, which is, like, don't look at fat people. That was, like, in the book. It's like, if you wanna lose weight, don't look at fat people. And even the notion that's like, well, people wonder, how did this was in The Secret, by the way. Not This is not like deep cut here. It's in like a best-selling book, which was like, the people who experienced natural disasters in Asia, there was a collective conscience of people having negative thoughts. So really trying to avoid negative thinking is extremely dangerous for humanity. Because sixth hub, full circle here, is that it's not that that action is even anything we can do, but there needs to be watching, accountability. Like there's this thing like in the grocery stores here in Boston, they have this thing where the camera on the self-checkout in the grocery store, I don't know if I said this, face you. It's your face. And you wonder, why is the camera not pointed at my groceries being scanned and then weighed? Because the psychology is that if you're being watched, you're gonna be more self-conscious and conscious about doing the right thing. So, very sixth hub. All it watches is your face. And yeah, I've been like, this is and it so what does this mean? It means that part of the sixth hub is and this is is just bringing consciousness to this, is that we're not we build the capacity to be able to see without being swamped out by the sense of like, I'm responsible for doing something about this. Like, that's part of it. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just look, just look. Don't turn away. That's it. It's where it starts. Just don't look away. First step. And this leads us into overwhelm, too much information. And, it's like, and when we're looking and we do get a surge of charge, we see things, they're upsetting. It's like we're trying to actively manage a sense of positivity, to stay feeling like relatively good, it's just building capacity with that and managing it as the feelings come up. Like, get in your journal and just process, like, what is this feeling? And understand that there is a reconciliation in your own process that happens when you're willing to look at the things that are like the dehumanization of other people, that our participation in the dehumanization of others by looking away. Like, the thing is, like, if you're neutral in the face of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor, right? That saying, which is to look away is a significant act. So to just look, just like be able, just don't look away. That's sixth hub. I mean, techniques and exercises, not, like, be damned. It's just look. Don't look away. Connect to your own humanity. Connect to your own sense of connection to other people. There's a lot of this like NPC shit that's happening right now. It's like there's just like an endless, and I even like spent some time sort of considering this because I'm like, yeah, there really are people that you interact with where there's just like not a lot going on. And to me, I mean, other people, there's a lot going on. So this context that other people are NPCs because like we don't connect well is also non-player characters for those of you but just the idea of, like, any of these, like, micro practices for dehumanization, because now there's a whole thing of, like, how many of these people are just, part of my simulation? So anything that we're doing that participates in that, we're actually it's like the notion of karma, this idea that karma is like a one-to-one scorekeeping thing. It's like, no, karma is actually, one of my teachers had taught me is like, it's actually just the notion that anything you're doing to yourself. It's not like if I take $1 from this person, that it's like this score. It's literally like, no, that there's this and I'm not even gonna talk about oneness. I'm gonna talk about this, like, kind of the unified self in this sense of, like, when you're doing something to someone else, you're seeing that that's what the world does. You're creating so this thing of, like, I'm creating my world, it's like creating a worldview where you couldn't look away from somebody's suffering, that you would look at it and process the sense of helplessness. Someone looks on and, like, wishes they could help, and there's nothing they understand they can do. Then it's like, well, so that's just step 1. And then it's kind of like, wow, okay, so I can do that. Now it's like, maybe there's an action I'll take. Maybe I donate. Maybe I call a senator. Maybe I tell somebody else about it. Like, this idea that it's like, so it's kind of but the first thing is it is just being able to, like, have capacity for emotion, feelings, negative feelings, which is a lot. It's hard. So, okay, we're gonna read. There we go. So overwhelm. Let's see if this conflicts with what I just said. Very possible. So too much information. So two there, and this isn't very long. So fear not. So the approach to overwhelm and anxiety in the earlier hubs focuses on embodiment with the containment of expansive feelings within the boundary of our physical bodies. Oh, yeah, remember that from chapter 4 and 5. Here in the sixth hub, we can manage overwhelm by using cognitive awareness. And just a reminder that, like, that feeling of overwhelm that we're managing by actually physically, like, establishing the parameter of our body through touch and sensation. So, okay. So here in the sixth hub, we can manage overwhelm by using cognitive awareness. Feeling that there's too much information to process and having our peace of mind hijacked are aspects of feeling loss of control in a situation. So overwhelm happens when we lose our place in a pattern. We lose our perspective and find ourselves in either unfamiliar territory or a situation that requires greater capacity than what we may believe we currently have. Or perhaps we bite off more than we can chew and feel overwhelmed by not knowing what to do next. When this is the case, just take the next step. Sometimes we think we need to know the entire plan when all we need to do is hey, listen, it's actually kind of works. When all we need to do is take a single next action. Wow, it's consistent. It's cool. Sometimes this means slowing down and not doing anything so that we can regain our footing, especially if things become overwhelming because they're moving too quickly. We can only see patterns when we have perspective. So, for example, look back at your personal history, and you're more likely to see that you always pick the same kinds of partners, repeat the same mistakes, or consistently excel in certain areas. So, losing our place often starts when we encounter something unfamiliar. When we read a book and run across a word we don't know, studies show that reading comprehension for everything that follows declines. We live inside patterns, and when we get overwhelmed and feel lost, we can resolve the anxiety of uncertainty by looking back to discover the exact moment when the feelings began investing in the effort to understand the unfamiliar, and then moving forward. Sometimes we need to catch our breath before we can look back. This too shall pass is a beneficial mantra when we lose our place in a pattern in our life, getting overwhelmed by thoughts and emotion. If you think about it, we always find our way back. And if well lost, we can remain relatively calm. We tend to get back on track faster. The ability to tolerate uncertainty can help reveal insights when we can watch our downturns into overwhelm, sadness, and low energy with interest and compassion. All rhythms and patterns pass through downbeats, descending before they can rise again. The knowledge of cycles helps to instill some peace, knowing that although we will likely lose our position again, we can also return. It's always darkest before the dawn, and after daylight, darkness returns, a pattern that repeats itself indefinitely. Well, that's kind of nice. It's a good finish for this. So, yeah. So, let me know what you think. I welcome dissension once again. Happy to hear that I'm wrong. Any Byron Katie apologists out there, come at me. I'm ready. I'm ready for you. Yeah, I mean, look, even the stuff with like Byron Katie, like there's nothing, like in terms of like everything contains sort of paradox and relativity, is that there are people that helps them manage feelings of overwhelm. I mean, there's that. I mean, it like you really do have to actually have a pretty solid foundation already. Like there like a lot of your needs, you like a good amount of your human needs need to be met for that methodology to work, which is, but still, but still, it like, yeah. Anyhow, so that's it for today. Um, yeah, I think we did it. And next we're on to interruptions and stressors. And so this one, we've invalidation of intuition, ideation, and creativity. Um, so it's invalidating intuition, invalidated ideas and curiosity. And then there's, bad data, like garbage in, garbage out. And we get into this quite a bit. There's a lot more to this chapter than, I was realizing we've like probably like close to 20 pages left of this exploration. And, yeah, I don't know. Like one of the things that, yeah, no, I'm not good. It's not really that strong. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see where this goes. I get surprised with the techniques and exercises tends to kind of like have this quality where, it's not just, there's like insights in there as well. So sometimes I'm reading through this and I'm like, yeah, I feel like we kind of missed somehow something that I thought was important kind of like slip through the cracks, and then it'll be in the techniques and exercises. But I mean, it sounds a little like almost like depersonalized for me to say this about a book that I sort of technically wrote here, but it's rich. The book's rich. Like it's just potent. And yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot in there, in here. And so, yeah, there's a lot in here. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, but I'm getting a lot out of this process. I'll say I'm getting a tremendous, and this was an unexpected outcome of this, and I think I've already talked about this, but in reading this and then ultimately doing it in a way that I never did when I was writing it, because it was I mean, another thing I'll bring up is that like, reading it is very different than writing it, because in writing it, the amount of exploration in a given section. So we just read that in a, kind of a little blip. And however much, I mean, there's like probably a ton on the cutting room floor on it and where it fitted. Like the amount of like time that I got to spend with each of these concepts and the exploration, it like deepened the notion. But there often, it was, it wasn't written cover to cover. So even this experience of reading this straight through has really changed my own perception about the way this works, because I'd even been, when people said, "Well, pick the hub that you really wanna work on," and I used to be like, "Yeah, that would be cool." And now I see that very differently. I think that I mean, I see that very differently, and the experience I'm having with this is extraordinary. So I hope, yeah, I hope the same for you, truly, really and truly. So, okay, until next time, again, thank you for coming along, and I can't wait to see you. Bye.